I don't stand side by side with nobody till I bleed with them first.
What did we just see? You probably think this world is a dream come true.
When I step into this ring, yeah, bro, I am addicted.
Don't sleep on Luca!
Maybe tomorrow we'll all wear 42.
If you fight for your dreams will fight for you!
On January 4th, 2023, New Japan Pro Wrestling held the 17th installment of their annual event, Wrestle Kingdom. On this night, Kairi would defend her IWGP Women's Championship for the first time against Tam Nakano. However, there was a looming storm over the horizon. See, in the build-up to the event, there were a plethora of rumors that former WWE superstar and multi-time women's champion Sasha Banks could make her debut. There was a lot of skepticism around this idea because of the fact that Sasha Banks' release was never made clear. Back in May of 2022, Sasha Banks and Naomi were currently WWE Women's Tag Team Champions. The two would walk out mere hours before their scheduled appearance on Monday Night Raw with news reports citing a creative dispute as the cause. Banks and Naomi would not return to the company and likely requested their release from their contracts at the time. The difficult part for fans to gauge was their contract status. WWE never once put out a statement that the two had been given their release, and the two themselves essentially went radio silent. Not even various news sites could confirm any truth to any rumors regarding their status. It wasn't until December of 2022 that reports started to come out that Banks had negotiated her release months ago and now was in talks with New Japan Pro Wrestling about a per-appearance contract deal. Add in the fact that just last month in November, New Japan Pro Wrestling held their historic X-Over event with Japanese all-women's promotion STARDOM, where they crowned the first ever IWGP Women's Champion, and the stars seemingly began to align. However, the date everybody kept hearing in regards to when the now Mercedes Mone could legally make her first post-WWE appearance was January 4th. So, we come back to this night and the IWGP Women's Championship match. Kairi successfully defended her title against Tam Nakano in a match that was way too short. As Kairi would celebrate her win, the arena would go dark and the rumors became reality. Just like her hair would signify, gone was the boss Sasha Banks, in place is now the CEO, Mercedes Mone. A woman Kairi knows all too well from her time in WWE, so she is rightfully cautious with Mone. As she raises the belt to signal a challenge, Mone extends her hand. Perhaps too shaken up by the surprise debut, Kairi shakes her hand, only for Mone to pull her into her new finisher. She lets it be known that she is coming for the title. We'd see the face-off at New Japan Pro Wrestling's Battle in the Valley taking place in San Jose, California. The match between the two would be a good one that saw Mercedes Mone capture the title from Kairi. One thing I forgot to mention, after Mone made her debut, she would have a press conference. In this press conference, Mone would declare that she is on a world tour and can't wait to face whoever the world has to offer. One name she explicitly mentioned was Miyu Yamashita of Tokyo Joshi Pro Wrestling. The other name would be the spark for her first defense and feud as IWGP Women's Champion. In her press conference, Mone would state that, along with Miyu Yamashita, she wanted to face off against...
I really like AZM.
Now hold on a minute.
AZM?
おいおいスペルは AZM だけど応援するときはあずみだからな Bow down to あずみ
The clip that set Joshi Twitter on fire. Mone makes it known she wants to face off against Stardom's high-speed master, Azumi. For those who don't know her already, Azumi is, in my humble opinion, one of the greatest workers in the wrestling world today. She was my Wrestler of the Year in 2022, along with having my Match of the Year in her bout against Starlight Kid. Azumi is 20 years old, is a part of Stardom's Queen's Quest faction, and has been training and wrestling with Stardom since around the age of 13. She was simultaneously attending school while wrestling, so imagine my shock back in 2020 when I was in my first semester of college and I saw Azumi posting that she not only turned 18 but graduated high school. As I referred to her earlier, she is a master of the high-speed style. In Stardom, they have a championship for this style, which Azumi has won twice now in her career. The high-speed style is a fast-paced style of wrestling, and the championship is for those who wrestle that style. The comparison I can best give is to WCW's Cruiserweight division and title back in the day, as well as even TNA's X division. I especially love these comparisons because this division in Stardom is very diverse like those. Just because the style is fast-paced doesn't mean you lose variety. In fact, Azumi is one of the most complete wrestlers. She is very fast-paced and can hit you with dives and aerial offense, but can also be technical and methodical. She can beat you with her top rope foot stomp, with her armbar submission, or a variety of roll-ups like her patented Azumi Sushi. But, of course, the focal point of her style and identity as a whole is just how fast she works. So much so that going into this match with Mone, many were worried that Mone might not be able to keep up. While many saw it as a dig at Mone, and I understand why given the spite many seem to have for Mone, the Stardom fans meant it more as praise towards Azumi. At the end of the day though, many were simply excited to see Mone face off against Azumi in a match that would test her abilities. And speaking of testing, Mone really began to test Azumi's patience, constantly referring to her as AZM and never correcting it despite Azumi's attempts. It started becoming very clear that Azumi was becoming frustrated with Mone's antics, and yet it was only the beginning. So, the next event and place of Mone's Japanese debut was New Japan Pro Wrestling's Sakura Genesis. This event would take place on April 8, 2023. Leading up to this event, Stardom had their own event, and that was the Cinderella Tournament. Azumi would be in the tournament, and in the press conference made her intentions clear. She wants to face Mone for the IWGP Women's Championship and win the tournament to challenge herself against her seniors such as Julia. However, Azumi would be interrupted by her first round opponent, Hazuki. Hazuki is a 25-year-old wrestler and is a part of Stardom's Stars faction. Hazuki began wrestling in 2014 before retiring in 2019. However, in 2021, Hazuki would come out of retirement. Since coming out of retirement, she has challenged for both of Stardom's main belts and won the tag titles twice with her partner and Star's stablemate, Koguma. She is also very familiar with Azumi, as Hazuki used to be in Queen's Quest and even won the trio's titles twice with Azumi and Io Shirai as a part of the faction. Similarly, Hazuki has also won the High Speed Championship in her career. She even defeated Azumi twice in this reign, once in singles competition and the other in a triple threat. She is well versed in the high-speed style, but that doesn't stop her from laying in the hits. She would interrupt Azumi and make it known that she was also interested in challenging for Mone's championship. She also made it known that she didn't feel like waiting. First, Azumi had to deal with Mone not pronouncing her name right, and now she has to worry about Hazuki making it a triple threat match. Unfortunately for Azumi, the match would go ahead and be made into a triple threat. So, right before we arrive at Sakura Genesis, we have a press conference. It is here at the press conference that we get to hear from our three competitors. Hazuki made her purpose known, saying that she wanted to captivate the audience, showing just how great women's wrestling can be, especially in the three-way format. Adding to the already building story, Azumi reveals that she originally wasn't going to challenge for the IWGP Women's Championship. It wasn't until Mone mentioned her by name and then watching Mone that Azumi felt compelled to. However, when she thanks Mone, she doesn't even get a glance. Feeling further disrespected, Azumi shouts at her and once again brings up the name pronunciation.
Repeat after me. Azumi.
AZM.
Oi!
Of course, Mone continues the disrespect and even adds that the two of them should consider themselves lucky. Azumi for mentioning her name and the two of them for her agreeing to this match. And so, we arrive at Sakura Genesis. The three lock up and the match already begins, high speed style. The three lock up, run the ropes, and each woman already tries to get a roll up in. Afterwards, Hazuki and Azumi shake hands and Hazuki wants to do the same with Mone. Mone begins the mind games when she ignores Hazuki's request and instead goes to shake hands with Azumi. She once again calls her AZM to the displeasure of Azumi, except she finally says Azumi's name right, shakes hands with Azumi, and uses Azumi's excitement to get her to double team Hazuki. Hazuki counters this and pulls the two into each other. She hits a drop kick on both before setting her sights on Mone. As Mone is hung up on the bottom rope, Hazuki lays into her with kicks before hitting a huge running kick onto her. As Hazuki tries to lift Mone, Mone shows great ring awareness as she kicks Azumi, who tried to run in and then escapes Hazuki. She then tries to hit the moneymaker, but Hazuki kicks Azumi this time to get enough momentum to get out of the move. Mone and Hazuki go back and forth trying to hit suplexes before Mone rolls her up for a pin. only for Azumi to come out of nowhere with a top rope foot stomp. Mone exits to the outside, but it doesn't guarantee her safety. Azumi and Hazuki continue in the ring trying to get an advantage. As Azumi Irish whips Hazuki, instead of hitting the ropes, she dives out onto Mone. As the two of them battle on the outside, Azumi runs and jumps off the top rope onto Mone and Hazuki. Azumi sets up Hazuki in the middle and hits her signature foot stomp off the top rope. Hazuki is just able to kick out at 2 though. Azumi attempts a Hurricane Rana, only for Hazuki to reverse it into a chokehold. As she gets Azumi down to the ground, Mone returns and hits a Meteora before transitioning it into a crossface onto both competitors. Both escape the move and then both put a crossface onto Mone, who only escapes by biting both women. As both women recover in different corners, Mone hits the knees, corner Meteoras, and then coast-to-coast corner kicks. Mone then tries to hit a moneymaker on Azumi, only to be hit with a codebreaker by Hazuki. Azumi then rolls up Mone, only for Hazuki to break up the pin at 2. Hazuki then gets Azumi in a crossface. With Mone down, Azumi tries to crawl to the ropes, and then instead reverses it into an armbar. Mone attempts to roll up Azumi, but it's reversed into another submission. Hazuki then tries to roll up Azumi, but she escapes and looks to perform a Hurricane Rana on Hazuki, only to adjust at the last second and latch onto Mone and plants her face first. Azumi then stacks the 2 women for her armbar, only to be rolled up by both women. She escapes and then begins to climb the turnbuckles. Hazuki and Mone meet her up there and try to perform a double suplex. Azumi avoids it, but then eats a headbutt from Hazuki. Hazuki attempts a solo suplex, but Mone jumps onto the ropes, spins, and performs a powerbomb to send Hazuki crashing down and Azumi, who was suplexed with the move. After recovering, the 3 women meet in the middle and begin clubbing each other. This dissolves into a striking exchange between Hazuki and Mone, before Mone hits a backbreaker on Hazuki. She then hits one on Azumi and then a Meteora off the second rope. After some offense, Azumi tries her signature roll-up, but it only gets a 2. Her and Mone then begin their back and forth striking exchange, only to be interrupted by a springboard dropkick by Hazuki. As I mentioned earlier, Hazuki is a wrestler who can lay in heavy hits if she wants to, and Mone unfortunately finds that out. She tries to get into a striking exchange with Hazuki, but Hazuki just overpowers her. So much so that Mone collapses to the ground. Hazuki doesn't stop though, as she just lays in the stiff hits to Mone's neck and upper chest area. The last hit she lays in is especially stiff. As Mone attempts to hit another second rope Meteora, Hazuki kicks her legs out. Trapped in the ropes, Mone can do nothing as Hazuki hits a huge codebreaker on her. Hazuki isn't finished though, as she hits a huge codebreaker off the top rope. Azumi interrupts the pin before Hazuki angrily throws her out the ring. Mone again tries to hit the moneymaker, but Hazuki reverses it into a pin. Azumi breaks it up and her and Hazuki trade roll-ups. Hazuki looks to finish the match and attempts the brainbuster. Mone begins to resist, and it's the little resistance that ends up playing a pivotal role. It buys enough time for Azumi to interrupt once again and roll up Hazuki. And it's this moment in the match that I love because of how it tells a story so simply. Look back to the press conference. Azumi said she wasn't going to challenge for the title, citing that she was high-speed champion and had stereotypes of herself that made her think she wasn't ready to challenge for the IWGP Women's Championship. This sort of doubt is further exemplified when you realize that Azumi has never challenged for either of the main 2 championships in Stardom, while her rival Starlight Kid has challenged for the white belt many times. And this doubt is all but confirmed in this closing moment of the match. She rolls up Hazuki, a move that has probably won her hundreds of matches by this point. But she forgets 2 things. This is a 3-way match. The roll-up may have worked before in her previous matches, but her chances are much lower here in a match where there's a third person to take into consideration. And that brings us to 2. She doesn't know Mercedes Mone. Or really, the more accurate statement, she's still learning how to analyze her opponents. I think back to her match with Mei Saruga last year. How, even though she beat her, she didn't know how to react to her antics. I look at her match against Utami in the 5-star Grand Prix. Did she win because she scouted her fellow stablemate, or because she went headstrong with her high-speed style? Because in this match, she goes headstrong with high speed, and it bites her because she forgets about Mone, who snatches her out of the roll-up and hits the moneymaker on her onto Hazuki. Mone wins this because she is an opportunist who knows when and where to capitalize on the mistakes of her opponents. Whereas Azumi, she's still learning to break the habits that confine her to this high-speed style. The roll-ups that leave her just as vulnerable to attack or reversal. The dives and aerial moves that test her endurance, a big topic of discussion when taking into consideration how short high-speed matches tend to be. And of course, her mentality. She said it herself. She wasn't going to challenge because she felt she wasn't ready. And yet, she was provoked into this match through Mone's actions. Hazuki plays just as an important role in Azumi's story as well because of the history. She was a high-speed champion and staple of the division as well. But eventually, she grew out of it. She may maintain some of it to this day, but she evolved her game to match what the higher levels of wrestling require. How many times was she getting the best of Mone and even came close to beating her, only for Azumi to get in the way? Her involvement in the match and feud even further fuels Azumi's doubts because she doesn't get the singles showcase. The commentators make a short notice of this, but what does it say about Azumi if management decided a three-way was better than a singles match? Do they also believe she is not ready for a moment like this? And then you look at Mone's involvement. To some, the catalyst for a feud being name pronunciation sounds silly. But don't you think it goes deeper than that, especially for Azumi? Mone obviously recognizes her abilities as a wrestler if she lists her as a dream match. Or does she? Because if she did, wouldn't she have at least known how to pronounce her name? Such a simple and small thing, but yet it reveals how much Mone actually respects Azumi. Mone even said in the press conference that Azumi was lucky Mone even mentioned her name. It wasn't Azumi's name that garnered attention, it was Mone mentioning her name that did. Azumi is a great wrestler. Like I said, she's one of the best right now. I consider this match and a feud as a whole a masterpiece because of how well it told this story in the background. To many, they look at it as a good match and a filler for Mone's championship reign. But to me, it beautifully tells the story of Azumi's first real shot outside the high-speed limitations, and just how much of a gap she needs to fill. Mone and Hazuki are the perfect foils because Mone represents the type of wrestlers Azumi's going to have to come to face once she steps out of that box, and Hazuki represents who she can evolve into as a high-speed wrestler. She may not have been ready yet, but one day she's going to put together all the pieces. When that day comes, the wrestling world is in for a shock.